This week on Rewatch Play, we are covering Ready Player One. We had two special guests this week, Brian and Sam from the Retrotopia podcast. Check the show notes and we'll provide all their information and where you can find out more about their show and their social media. Really enjoyed having them on. It was a really good conversation, a long conversation, so strap in. We kicked it off by discussing their podcast and our thoughts on VR with the topic of Ready Player One. Spent a good portion on the book first, and then we got into the movie. So if you're only interested in the movie, check the show notes and you can jump ahead. We kind of mark the chapters there. If you're new here, we cover adaptations, and unfortunately, spooky season is over. But if you don't want to let Halloween go, our last episode, we covered A Haunting in Venice. We also had our first in a horror running series, Read, Watch, Scare, where we covered Smile. Coming up next, celebrating our 1-year anniversary for Jurassic Park, and then moving on to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. We come out every other Thursday, so please consider following the show or subscribing on your podcast of choice, whether that's Spotify, Apple, wherever that may be. Really helps us. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Honestly, that is the most helpful thing you can do. Is tell people about the show, follow us on, whatever your app is, and rate us 5 stars if you like it. If you want to see what we're up to in a little bit more real time, you can follow us on Instagram at Rewatch Play Podcast. We post about the show. We show some behind the scenes stuff on what we're reading, what we're watching, what we're playing, memes we like. It's a good way to interact with us, submit comments for the show, suggestions. We're pretty active on there. If you want to chat with us, or if you don't have Instagram, you can reach out to us at Gmail, rewatchplaypod@gmail. Nick would probably say here that he does not check the email, which he does not, but I check the email. If you want to write to me, I will answer. That's all for now. On with the show. Welcome to Read, Watch, Play, your dive into the stories we love and how they're adapted. This is episode 27, and we are having a conversation about Ready Player One. I'm joined, as always, by everyone's favorite Gunter, Nick Hinkson. This episode, we decided to team up with the Retrotopia clan of Brian and Sam in our quest to find the egg and become the greatest podcasters in the Oasis. Brian and Sam, welcome to the basement. How's it going, boys?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad. That was a beautiful intro.
God damn, that was beautiful.
I can't even find my keys on most days. I don't know how we're going to get through this podcast.
As mentioned, this week, Brian and Sam, they're coming in hot from the Retrotopia podcast, where every week, them and or Alan reminisce about video games of our childhood. They really deliver an awesome product that is oozing with passion and charm. Outside of the regular feed of episodes, they have a quick play series where Brian, Sam, or Alan does a bite-sized mini review. I guess bite-sized mini is the same thing. They also have their Retro Bite series, where it's more of a lads down at the Winchester having a pint type of vibe, discussing things gaming related, maybe not. So they don't have to plug it. I'm going to just jump in right here with it. Check them out, follow the show, go to their Patreon. Absolutely. If you join the Patreon, you get access to the episodes early. Let me know if I get this right, boys. You get the quick play series episodes. You can submit questions and comments, and you get access to the Discord where you can see me live tweet every episode on a weekly basis. They also have a paid tier for $2 a month with additional benefits like you can request a quick play series, you can talk with the boys, and more.
Yeah, no.
Did I miss anything?
No, you do it better than I do.
No.
Can I clip that for our show? I'll just play that and try to muddle through it every week.
And now we have a special guest. Randy is going to tell you what you can get from the Patreon.
Is there anything else you'd like to plug with the show, or maybe give a teaser of what's coming down the pipe?
Oh, geez, the secret whiteboard of ideas.
Yeah.
It's empty.
No, we did.
Sounds like my brain.
We did have a programming meeting late last week, though. So I could let you know. I'll give you a sneak peek on what we have coming up in the next few weeks, if we want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So coming up in the next. Whoa. Oh, maybe not.
I got it.
Everything got all wonky on me.
Yeah.
Nope,
well,
here we go.
I can kind of go over this. We got Luigi's Mansion coming up the week we're recording this. So we were talking beforehand. When do we record? We have no idea. So it's coming. We just have nothing ready yet. Followed that, we got Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Mega Man X, Soul Reaver, Tiny Toon Adventures, Xenogears. We got a bunch of games coming up for the rest of the year, and then a special game on Christmas called The Legend of Santa.
Ooh.
Yeah, it is a cheap game on Switch that is using the Super Mario Brothers 3 platform to build a game where you're Santa Claus. So we're looking forward to that.
I played a little bit of it the other day, and you get, instead of coins, you get cookies, and then like Santa throws coal instead of fireballs. It's it's a fun little game. I like it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I guess I want to start with what is, maybe Brian first. Are you a reader? Are you a big reader?
Not as much as I used to be. I do have a collection of books that I'll reread over and over again. I don't know if it's just like the stress of life or whatever, but I've gotten into this bad habit of rewatching and rereading things as opposed to going for anything new. I play old video games. I reread books. I've just finished watching Scrubs again right after watching Modern Family. Even movies, I'm going through old movies, just stuff I already know. For some reason, I don't have this desire right now to absorb new material. And maybe that's because I'm going to school and I'm scared that if I watch something new, I'm going to knock math out of my head.
It's going to take up bandwidth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what age it happened, but there is a definite point where it feels like your brain can just no longer contain any more information. And it's like, if something's coming in, something has to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that happened, but it happened.
And I've already used up my wife's birthday, so that's gone.
And that's why Brian doesn't watch any more new shows.
Sam, what about you? What's your like relationship to reading?
Oh, I'm a big reader. If I move a little bit, those are a couple of my bookshelves behind me. But I mean, like Brian, I do tend to reread or mix in a little bit more rereading than I used to. But I usually have at least a book or two on the go. Yeah. So up next, because I blitzed through Ready Player One this past week, I'm gonna jump back into my Michael Crichton Odyssey. I've got Prey from the library, so I'm gonna check that one out next. But yeah, usually a pretty decent mix of fantasy, sci-fi, thriller. I'd like to mix in some more mystery. I was listening to your Poirot episode and your Agatha Christie. Yeah, I maybe can skip that one, but I've got a couple different ones here. That does sound boring. But yeah, pretty much. I try to mix in some nonfiction too, just to keep my brain spry, but that doesn't always happen the way we want it to, does it?
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome to just have you guys on the pod. I feel like we started our shows at a very similar time. I think you just had your year anniversary like a month ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought we started the same day almost.
I think it might have been.
Just about.
Yes.
Except you have double the episodes as you guys. I don't know how you do it. You're pumping out one every week, multiple a week at this point now.
Oh,
it's impressive.
It's all about getting the boys together, rallying, and then panicking at the last minute.
Yeah.
It's like any project. Just treat it like a school project and you'll get it done, 12 o'clock the night it's due.
Right. And I do like, it's a passion project. It's a hobby, but we do kind of, I try to treat it like it's a second job, even though it doesn't, like obviously we have a Patreon, but it's not like we're making tons of money off of it or anything. We just do it for the fun of it. And
the Patreon's more about organization than it was about making massive dollars.
Right. Maybe like cutting a couple of subscription fees or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, you treat it, you kind of prioritize it like you would a job. And then it you end up, feeding your passion to something that, I'm not passionate about my actual day-to-day job. So, I can feed my passion into this, and it's been a good outlet, I think. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's on the fence about maybe taking the leap to just do it.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot.
We could just convert this into a Star Wars podcast if we want.
Oh, here we go again. I have yet to make it through a podcast about Star Wars being brought up.
Yes. Let's do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm busy all of a sudden.
Yeah. Nick, I want to kick this. I had this kind of sort of intro topic that I wanted to discuss. What are your thoughts on VR? Like, does virtual reality, do you have any interest in it? Would you enjoy spending time in the Oasis?
I would not. I get motion sick if I turn too fast. So me being in VR is not going to go well. I've used an Oculus headset once and I threw up like almost immediately. So if this is our future, I am screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need like a puke bucket for sure. Or just like a trough. It'd be like attached to the headset, and I could just, maybe a vacuum on it or something.
Yeah, I have a
Hey, I'm sure IOI will sell you one.
My kid downstairs right now has his Oculus on, and he's doing backflips and whatever, and he's absolutely fine with it. I get within 10 feet of the thing, and yeah, it's just stomach turns. It's I've tried it so many times, and like I actually have a VR headset for my computer that sits in its box right now because I put it on once and I just got like all the sweats and my stomach went queasy. I tried his Oculus. I had the PlayStation VR, the original, and every time it's just, I feel so bad. As soon as I put it on, my brain just, it's like, no, you don't like this. And I think the biggest problem is the perception of motion versus actually moving. So one of the games I was playing was just run down the hallway, and because my body wasn't moving, but my brain is like, yes, you are, all of a sudden I just got like queasy, and that was it for me. I never put it on again.
What a game. Run down the hallway.
Was that the title?
Yeah.
I wish.
Obviously, I'm not giving you the full game there, Sam.
A thought occurred though, like, is it just a technology issue? Like, we're still in the kind of the infancy of true VR with like the PlayStation VR, the Oculus headset, whatever the other ones are. I don't know what they are. I don't keep up with it, but like, it's really strongly implied that these like Oasis headsets are like, they have the haptics and are just like scanning deep inside your retinas, which is also unsettling, but like really like more of a full immersion than just, looking at something that's surrounding you, which I think can be the most disorienting part. So I guess maybe like a true VR, if it's going to catch on like this, it has to be more, like in your head or invasive, which I also don't love.
Yeah, I've actually never used any sort of headset, like any of the PSVR 2 or Oculus, none of them. What is the Facebook MetaQuest or whatever it's called?
That one. That's the one I forgot.
And it's interesting because when this book came out, I think it was a little bit pre even some of these sort of early adopters, for lack of a better term, trying to get this into the market. And it still seemed like this could happen. I mean, this book is set in 2045. But it's interesting reading it now, where we're 13 years after then, and people have been trying to get VR to catch on, especially in the gaming world. And I don't think it's really worked. Brian and Sam are probably better authorities on that than I am, but it just definitely hasn't caught on like I think they hoped.
No, it hasn't. There's a market for it, but it's such a small market that it's not viable right now. Like, no company can actually make their business viable off of VR. And it's PlayStation that really seems to be trying to die in this hill for some reason, because that PSVR 2 looks cool, but name one game for it, right?
Yeah.
The Horizon one.
Eat shit, Sam.
I don't know. That's the only one I've heard. That's the only one I've heard of.
Always have to be that guy.
Yep, you know it.
No, but I think that's the difference between the Oasis and what we have, though, is the Oasis was way more than playing games. This was an immersive lifestyle, right? You could do your shopping, you could do vacations, you could do everything you want from there. And I think that would be, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would be the difference between this actually being a viable market and this weird niche subset of PlayStation users.
Yeah, and in the book as well, the Oasis is it's something that's been around for a long time. Like Gregorius Systems, people grew up and were born with the Oasis. And I take my kid as an example again, because he doesn't have a problem putting the headset on. He doesn't get the same kind of sickness that, people born before the VR age did. So I believe that might be probably the difference, because not only are you inside this economic world, but you also grew up with the technology.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, this book is set 30 years after PSVR has launched their first one. There's kids who've grown up with this. But it's interesting to me that, I mean, we are four people who are probably the target demographic for this book of like would be obsessed with the Oasis, should be obsessed with the Oasis, or be obsessed with VR, and we're all like, nah, I'd puke. No thanks.
For sure.
I'm gonna get my Amazon.
It sounds great on paper, right? Yeah, sounds great on paper to like basically have a game that contains all games. Like there's the way that they describe in the book is interesting, where it's like EverQuest and World of Warcraft and all the old 2000s era MMOs are all in there and as like standalone as part of the simulation. But then you can also go out and do quests on like all these other planets, and it's like the Rush planet was pretty sweet. Like there's a planet for everything, and there's you can as far as like the lifestyle simulation is kind of odd, because it really makes it more mass appeal for, in talking about the book setting, it's got mass appeal for everyone, where I think probably the company in the real world that's closest to that, or was trying to do that the most, was Meta with the MetaQuest, because that was really kind of trying to push that lifestyle. I think if like Zuckerberg could jump at this, he's probably like pisses his pants reading Ready Player One, like, oh yeah, that I want that. But that guy is Sorrento. He's not a Halliday.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
Look at the Meta meeting rooms or whatever they had. You looked like a sim. It was supposed to be this like lifelike version of you, and you looked like you were like being the little dot over your head.
Oh no, you remember when it was like I think it was during COVID, there was like floating this idea that like you could work from home in the office with a headset on, and it was like people were trying to push that for like a minute, and it was like, oh God, please don't. No,
please don't. Nick vomiting at work every day.
Yeah.
So if you look at slide,
so it's normal then.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm cut out for it, but I guess if we're talking about the setting of this book, we're the age of probably the main character's parents.
Yeah.
Maybe even closer to his grandparents. So this would be like Parzival, like grandparents being like, I don't understand how the Oasis works, and it's literally the conversation we're having.
Is it a Nintendo? Get off your Nintendo, Wade.
Yeah. Well, now I just feel bad about myself. So moving on. I have a few listener comments, and then I think we got some rapid fires, and we'll just get right into it.
Love the rapid fires.
Do we get to participate in the pew-pews?
You can participate in the pew-pews, absolutely. Yes. You might even be the focal point of the pew-pews, one might say.
Okay.
Big Kid 782 wrote and said, I haven't read the book, but the movie is a top 10 for sure. Thought about getting it on Audible. Guess I'll soon see if it will be worth it. Nick, I'm assuming you listened to this as opposed to read it.
Yeah, well, once I found out Will Wheaton did the audiobook, there was no turning back for me. I had to see how this played out.
It's a pretty good audiobook. I partially listened to it as an audiobook, and I'm not an audiobook guy, but he did really well. Did
the version you get actually have chapters? Because the one I found was abridged, and you had half the book and then half the book, so you kind of were stuck in that 10-hour you have to listen to this audiobook without turning it off and otherwise restarting it. So I did listen to the audiobook, but like I said, I was driving across country, so I had the time. But
no, mine was regular. It still had kind of the 3-level structure broken down by chapters.
Must be nuts.
At least the Will Wheaton one.
Yeah, mine was Will Wheaton as well. It just it was just all slammed together. Version. Maybe if I actually
Sam, did you read or listen?
I always read. I've never listened to an audiobook. I don't think it could hold my attention, or I would retain as much as if I read. So, and that's funny because I like listen to podcasts all the time.
Yeah.
And I retain that. I should try a short audiobook. I really should, but no, I read for sure.
Yeah.
You should speed it up too.
Yeah.
And no, be serious.
Oh, you serious?
When you listen to an audiobook, it's somebody reading, so it's slower than even just having a conversation. So your brain processes it a little bit differently than if you speed it up to like 1.1, 1.2. It'll sound more like actual conversation, and And to your point about listening to podcasts, it'll trigger that part of your brain.
Oh, or you put it on 0.5 and everyone sounds drunk, which is always amazing.
That's another fun way to listen.
I guess I use it. It's the equivalent of, I would assume you guys can relate to this. If I'm really crunched on getting something done for the podcast, I'll mix in the audiobook so I can like be reading and listening at, depending on what I'm doing throughout my day. Where I guess for you all, like if I was crunched on getting a game done, you might go on YouTube and watch a section of the game.
I have never done that 3-4 times.
But I'm like, I'm not going to finish this unless I have a little bit of assistance.
Well, we did the Rocket Knight Adventure episode, and for the life of me, like I couldn't get past, I think, like level 2 of that game. So we had to record, and I knew that Alan and our guest Joe both had finished the game, so I just watched the YouTube video. And I've recently been invited on another podcast to talk about that game, and I'm like, well, oh crap. So now I actually have to go through and try to finish the game because, I don't want to make a liar out of myself. So it's going to be time to buckle down and get good, I suppose.
You've put it on the internet now as an episode, so now everyone thinks you're an expert on Rocket Knight.
Yeah,
you're going to get calls.
Oh no, if they listen to the episode, they know I'm not. It's just it's like a monkey.
Someone's going to be on
monkey flinging shit at the side of a barn, right? And I apologize for swearing a lot. My Canadian in me makes me swear.
No, we no restrictions on that here. Alan, you guys may know him. Third chair of the Retrotopia podcast wrote in and said, "Guys, when are you coming home? I don't know how to work the oven and there's a weird noise coming from the basement. Also, we're out of spoons, so try and steal some from the Rewatch Playboys. Jokes aside, I've been meaning to check out this book and film for ages, so I'm excited to hear what you guys think of it. Please don't steal our spoons. We don't have a plethora of spoons right now."
No.
The noise coming from the basement is me, probably.
just Sam moaning.
Yeah.
Middle of the night, you're going to hear a window open, and then you'll hear somebody sneaking and be like, "Brian, go home." And you're like, okay. And the window will close.
Yep, I'm in the basement in my haptic gear with my VR on and my puke bucket. Recording this.
Your puke trough.
Yeah, trough. It's a trough.
The final bonk, boss. Bill Hostler wrote in and said, "Book is amazing. I've read it several times now. Draws me in every read through. That could have been written by Brian, but it was written by Bill." Thanks, Bill.
No problem. That's my alter ego.
Unbuckled wrote in and came in with, I said this to him. He's just firing on all cylinders now that he's had a second child with the dad joke, because this is the most dad sentence I've ever heard in my life. Randy, Brian, Nick, and Sam, there goes the neighborhood. That was all he wrote. And final one was Raging Demon. He said, "I really enjoyed the Ready Player One book. I think I listened to all the audiobook about 10 years ago. It was narrated by Will Wheaton, spelled exactly like Will Wheaton. The movie wasn't quite that level in my opinion, but I watched it with the whole family and they thought it was great. And Captain N, that's Brian, couldn't agree more."
Yeah, that's a running joke on a different podcast I comment on every week. Things follow you around, right?
Does follow you around. Like poor Sam and the bonking. Should we hit some pew-pews?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited for this.
Nick, I've got some. I don't know if you have some.
You want to? Yeah, I do. And I saw you did it. So I'm going to let you start it, and then I'm going to correct them when they're wrong.
Should we alternate pew? All right, I'm going to throw this one out. I'll ask this one to Brian first, and then Sam, I want to hear your answer next. Are you a Morrow or a Halliday guy?
I'd say I'm more of a Morrow guy because I can be social, but I do have that antisocial Halliday side. Mind you, I wouldn't give $500 billion to random people either, because I just have that buried with me. And then the message would be, pew, 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 F you.
Wow, you really brought the PQs into the answer. That's the first time that's ever happened. Gold star. Sam?
I guess I'd have to say I'm more of a Morrow as well. This time reading through, I got this is probably a longer response than a pew pew. So I guess my pew pew answer is Morrow. But like Halliday, I found Halliday kind of pissing me off a little bit more this read through than my first, because it's just like, dude, how dare you like hold the world at ransom and make them all watch all the movies and shit that you like? Like, who does that? Like, it's just, what a fucking sociopath.
That's a pro move right there.
I know.
Listen, if I had the power to do that, I would do it too. I'd make Randy have to read The Shining 10 times.
Nick's a Halliday. All right,
I suppose I could make Brian watch Star Wars and like pick out all the. Yeah,
I'll pick out the good parts, but the list will be short.
Nick, favorite 80s song?
That's a good one.
Sweet Child of Mine? Was that the 80s or early 90s?
I think Appetite came out. It was either 89 or 90.
Yeah.
I think it was 1989.
1987.
No, it's 87.
Yeah.
87.
You guys are not good gunters. You have to be like, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, Geffen Records, 1987. Just like so fucking pedantic. I hate that. Like how many words did this guy waste like just listing out facts about random shit? I could write a book too. The list of stuff.
I feel like this is coming from a place of jealousy, because you just literally want to turn around and be like, Star Wars Episode 4, 1977, or whatever it was.
I mean, I could do that.
Which we could do.
And you're just jealous that this guy beat you to the punch, and now you can't because of plagiarism and copyright law.
Dang it. Now that's his thing.
Brian and Sam, favorite 80s song?
Sam, you go first, because I got to think about this.
It's a tough one, man. I mean, favorite artists from the 80s are probably going to be like punk and metal, but I'd say as far as like 80s pop song, I'd have to say Africa by Toto.
Oh, classic.
Yeah. And I don't know the year or the friggin' record label, so I'm not going to list off all the bullshit.
Oh, God. I'd have to say Rush, honestly. Moving Pictures. It would be the album. Tom Sawyer would be the song. Tom Sawyer sits atop every playlist I ever make on Spotify. It's just literally one of my favorite songs of all time.
I made my kids listen to that in the car yesterday on the way back from soccer. It was awesome.
It's on brand Canada for Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, we likes our music the way we likes our music.
I'd probably go Billy Idol, Dancing with Myself.
That's a good one.
Love Billy Idol.
It's a good one.
Nick, I'm just going to give one more, but do you want to slot one in?
Yeah. Parsifal or Artemis?
Neither.
Artemis. Easy.
As a character or just like...
I can't give you any more context. I want to see what you take this question.
Okay. Artemis for sure. Her motivations, I think, are more noble for the start. I think Parzival comes around, but definitely she had the right motivations for trying to win the contest. So I sympathize with her character a little bit more.
See,
okay,
agree with that.
I go neither as my answer, because both of them. Like Parzival obviously is the main focal point of the story, so you learn all about his reasons and all that stuff, but Artemis always comes off as this kind of pretentious character to me for at least the first half, where they're really building the relationship. H would be the character. I like the motivation, because there's no they don't really get into the reason of what H wants to do with the money. She just wants to win the contest, right? And basically has a friendly competition with Parzival. So,
yeah,
I like their friendship to start the book off.
Mm-hmm.
I got a rapid fire one.
Yeah, hit it.
Would you consider H male or female based on how they identify with the avatar that they've chosen? Is that really H's inner? I mean, spoiler alert, we're spoiling stuff, I guess, but like, what do you think about that?
I think whatever H wants to be in the Oasis seems like he's identifying as a male in the Oasis, so I'd respect that.
Yeah.
Unless I was close enough that he told me otherwise. That'd probably be my answer. Because I actually saw a sort of a review when I was reading it where like, wow, Z is an asshole who continued to call H he after he found out she was a woman. And I was like, well, H has identified himself and presented himself as a man and wants to be called
that's
that.
explained
So
in
I was
the
going
book.
to say just the opposite.
That is literally
that's true.
explained in the book, is that after he discovers H is actually female, he says he still calls him inside the Oasis because that's how he knows the avatar H. And
right.
Yeah. But
I think if you're outraged by that, like the review that you read, it's definitely like someone who didn't read closely enough to kind of gather the nuance that Z is trying to portray, I guess. You know, it's like, yeah, I realize that, and he's fine with it too, is kind of cool. It's a pretty progressive thinking there on the part of the author. I did appreciate that.
I agree. Nick?
I'm going to steal your answer. Yeah. I thought that was, I mean, it's basically what I would have said anyway.
Now, I don't have a progressive question here. I have a regressive question here.
Oh, excellent.
Would you take the $5 million from Sorrento that he offered?
I've often thought about that.
I probably would.
Well, not just the $5 million, but like the extra $25 million. And if you find the egg, enough money to live. But then again, if you find the egg, you're, $500 billion richer. So, what a question.
Because here's the thing. This book was written in what, 2015, 2016? $5 million sounds like a lot. But if you, adjust for the cost of living up, 30 years, can you live on $5 million for the rest of your life if you're 18?
No, he'd blow through it right away. It's one of those things where you get your first job and maybe it's got like a salary you're not used to or a signing bonus or something and you blow it all right away, or it's like it seems like it's a lot and it's like, oh wait, no, costs in the real world are actually quite higher than I thought they were. So I think that if he would have taken it, I mean, obviously there would be no story. Like, of course he has to say no, but in this alternate shittier version of this book, like, and he takes the $5 million, like he ends up living in the stacks in Oklahoma, and he's like his aunt and uncle trying to like, pilfer items for drug money and stuff. Like he's not successful.
Yeah, it's valid. We would not have a book without it. That is for sure. I think also I thought about taking the money initially because at this point in the book, you're not built up to hate. You haven't spent the book with the Sixers yet or Sorrento to hate them, where it's more of a moral, like he's making a point here by not accepting the money, where I'm sure if I grew up with the Sixers and hating them, I might feel a little more resistant. But I'm also like, man, $5 million is $5 million.
Yeah,
I might take it.
It's actually one of my favorite parts of the book is that whole scene because it really builds the like you said, the story. But when Nolan Sorrento uses Wade Watts' real name, it really kind of sets off the gravity of what's happening. This evil corporation is now going to do anything to win. Mm-hmm. And you're right. That's the moment where you really start to hate Nolan Sorrento because he just seems like a greasy snake. So I'm going to amend my answer and say, no, I wouldn't take the $5 million just based on what happens in that part of the book.
Good answer. All right. I'm going to hit the synopsis here, and then let's just start getting into the book.
Yes.
Ready Player One, a 2011 young adult science fiction novel by Ernest Cline. This was actually originally written as a screenplay, was turned down by Warner Brothers, and Cline converted it into a novel, which blew up, and then Warner Bros. Had to come crawling back to him to make a movie out of it after it became popular, which Steven Spielberg directed in 2018. It was released. Ready Player One is sitting at a 4.23 on Goodreads. That's pretty damn high. That's pretty solid on Goodreads.
People
was a New York Times
bullshit.
I know. Yeah, absolute suckers for it.
Yeah.
Was a New York Times bestseller, which I honestly don't know what isn't a New York Times bestseller. And the movie grossed $607 million on a budget of $175, sitting at 7.4 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd. Little synopsis. In the story, we find ourselves set in a corporate dystopia in 2045 following teenage geek Wade Watts. Wade, along with millions of others around the globe, find themselves in poverty after the energy crisis has bankrupted the globe of its natural resources and bankrupted people of their will to spend time in reality. Instead, Wade, like so many others, spends all his time in the Oasis, a virtual reality world originally launched as a mass multiplayer online game. Tragically, in 2040, geek god and creator of the Oasis, James Halliday, dies, and in his will launches a global Easter egg hunt whose prize is a controlling stake in Gregarious Game Systems, the company behind the Oasis. This would give them full control over the most powerful and important company in the world. Wade and other egg hunters known as Gunters dream of winning the hunt, escaping poverty, and thwarting the evil company IOI, who is hell-bent on finding the egg. Did I miss anything? Any big beats there?
No, sounds pretty good.
I think that's pretty much it.
It's like you've done this before.
I'm going to start with Brian here. And I want to start with the premise. I know you like this book a lot. What resonates so much with the premise here for you? And why do you think that this book really blew up and resonated with so many people in the 2010s?
Because it's plausible. Like they're talking about the future, and we're basically headed down that path, globally already, because, we're killing this planet, and this is basically what's happening in the book, and we're going to war over stupid things. When I was to find out about this book, I was actually at work, and one of my friends, he just pulled it out of his locker and he handed me the book and said, "Hey, this is good. Give it a read." And I sat down and read it in 2 days. And it came at a time where I really kind of needed that escape from reality because the job was just kind of wearing me down. So I love the story. I love the hero's journey inside of this story. I love the references. I love how they use how Ernest Cline used the ideas of the gates and the keys and the clues and all that kind of stuff. The story between Parzival and Artemis, I found there's an entire chapter of them having a text message conversation. And for some reason, I really enjoyed that chapter, even though it is so boring. And then the end of the story, there's a sequence for the final gate. And from the moment, and I don't want to get into it right now, but from the moment this sequence starts up until the end of the book is just so well stitched together, how everything connects, that I guess that's kind of what really drew me into the book. Because when I was doing the reread, as soon as I got to that part again, I just bombed through the rest of the book in one sitting. Hopefully that's an answer.
Great answer.
Kind of lost my train
Sam, you said this
of
was your
thought.
second time reading?
Yeah, this was my second read through. I think I picked it up similar to Brian when it was suggested by a former coworker, and read through it. This time I actually got it on my Kindle, and I feel like I read even faster on a Kindle for some reason. You just flip. But yeah, it's got that quality where even if you're not, I didn't enjoy it as much on the second read through, but because I had that kind of in the back of my head, that preconceived notion, because I read Ready Player 2 and I couldn't stand it. I almost didn't finish it. But some of the things that bothered me about Ready Player 2 do show up in Ready Player 1 a little bit, just the style. And I was just like, oh, this is so off-putting. But I powered through it. It is a page turner. You get sucked into the action and you really do want to know what happens next. I mean, I completely forgot that there's a full ass Ocean's 11 style heist in the middle of it when he gets he allows himself to be taken, and they cut that, and actually kind of in the movie, and this is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but they insert Artemis into that instead. That pissed me off. The movie. I didn't love that
so much.
Because that scene would have been so cool. It was he had stuff, and the author held just enough information out as he's describing, oh, don't worry, because I did this on the back end, and it was just oh, what did he do next? How's he gonna manage this or whatever? He's boom, turn that bomb off or the force shield or whatever. I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah, I mean, just pieces of this book. You just can't put it down once you pick it up, and you need to know what happens next. And having the benefit of not having read it for years, I was just like in it again. So if you have not read it, I would suggest it. It is a good read.
Nick?
Yeah, I really like this book, and the reasons I really like this book have nothing to do with Ready Player One itself, but more like what it represents. So as a big fan of sci-fi and fantasy, and specifically reading sci-fi and fantasy books, this Ready Player One is really accessible. A lot of people can relate to a lot of aspects because while it is set in a slight future, the technology is something people understand. The references are something people understand. And I think books like this are really important to draw people into those genres. So for that reason, I really like this book. Yeah. I mean, I do this to myself and it makes me so angry where I go on and I read like the deep sci-fi takes on this book and all those gatekeepy dickheads who are like mad that the technology's not more advanced or the world's not as whatever they want. And so I don't know. I'm going to go on a rant if I keep talking about that. But I really liked Ready Player One because I think it was really good for the genre.
I had an interesting experience. I almost kind of the opposite of Sam, where I read this about 10 years ago, and I really didn't like it the first time. And I think I was in that pretentious state that you're describing, Nick. And I read this again for the first time. I was a dick, still am, some might say. And I
call up the voicemail.
Yeah, pull them up. Nick has the receipts. And this time I kind of knew what I was getting into, and this will sound like a critique, but I love these books. This is kind of like a nerd's Da Vinci Code. And I say it as a person, like, I love the Da Vinci Code when it came out. Like that type of writing that just propels you chapter after chapter after chapter. And it is so plot driven that you just want to know how this is going to be resolved. And you just fly through it before you know what has happened. And that is definitely how this is written. And I don't mean that as a critique, because I actually like the Da Vinci Code, when I read it, and it got me into more books like that. And like Nick, you said, I think this book does the same thing. But I actually agree most with Brian in that the premise of this is what really draws me in. And I think there's so much potential with the idea here of this Easter egg hunt, which is like a really cool idea for people who like video games, like would love to participate in something like this. Maybe not for the fate of the world, but maybe something lower stakes. And the idea that people are combating against kind of this corporatism going on, and there's this energy crisis, which is relatable, and we'll probably have to face at some point. But the themes of this and all the stuff that happens outside the Oasis, I think is so intriguing. Absolutely bumped up on some of the writing style stuff, like some of the cheesy, corny dialogue. Occasionally I felt like nostalgia baited. But this time I knew what I was getting into, and I was like, I'm just gonna have fun. And like people who like want to overanalyze this, that's not the point of this. This is a YA science fiction novel that's supposed to be a good read that propels you to the end. And I think it does that, at the end of the day.
It's the popcorn movie of books, kind of,
yeah.
It's meant to be a fun ride. It's not really meant to be like, it's not The Stranger. It's not, like Moby Dick or anything like that. It's just supposed to be fun.
Yeah, I've always, I've never overanalyzed this book. I've always gone into it with the joy and wonder of a child, looking back at its history. And, the fact that the references are not things that are like way beyond things I'd ever know. They're actually part of my life. Yeah. So it was kind of nice for these callbacks to happen all the time.
No, I agree. I mean, especially like, you both pointed them out, like the rush sequence, or I really like the Blade Runner part, like things like that. It's fun, and just imagining like, oh, like that would be awesome to like experience that, even though we said puke during it. The idea is cool. My follow-up question is, this book is organized into 3 levels. Which level is your favorite?
3.
I'll start with 3.
Sorry.
No doubt.
3.
It's a terrible question.
I'm going to be the contrarian and say 1. I loved 1. The opening. And that's, I mean, Again,
Can we all agree it's not 2 though?
Yeah,
Like,
I was going to say, like,
Yeah.
I could go
Two
1 or
rushed.
3, but 2 was a drag, and not like a bad drag, but when you're sitting side by side with 2 really good levels, I mean, one of them has to be the worst one, and that just, god damn, that's the hard part of the book to get through.
Is level 2 the one where he kind of like goes astray a little bit and ends up playing that perfect Pac-Man game?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the kind of the coolest part of that, but yeah.
But it's also the
Other
part
than that,
where
it was
he's
just like
falling, falling off of his pedestal. He's no longer the first person. Artemis gets the jade key, then H gets the jade key, and he has to be basically spoon-fed the information to get it. It was kind of fun, but it really is a section about this kid spiraling, hard word to say, into depression.
Yeah. It is kind of the downer. It's really like the Empire Strikes Back of the 3 levels. You know, he doesn't win, basically. Like he takes one on the chin a little bit.
I can't even with you anymore.
There you go.
I was just waiting for it.
I didn't even realize until after I said it. Uh-oh, triggered.
Yeah.
This is episode 9.
I'm glad we're in agreement on
yourself.
level 2. And I think like what doesn't work for me there is it's so isolated on Parzival, and he's in like his mopey stage over Artemis, and clearly just acting like, you know, someone who's been scorned by his first love. And it's just not enjoyable to be in his head during those chapters.
Having sex with sex dolls.
Yeah, literally has a haptic
to drop
doll.
that. Yeah.
Which there were some funny bits in this book like those. I clocked a few of them. But I agree. I think what works for me in the first and the third level was there were the most like interesting narrative things that happen, which I like in level 1. We kind of are instantly revealed that Z finds the key, and then we work up to that in the present. And I thought that was fun. And then in the third one, the heist, which the author doesn't immediately reveal is a heist, I thought was the best part of, like, one of the most exciting part of the book.
I had forgotten that part, and it was as it was happening, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Like at first, I was like, "Oh shit, that's right." He gets taken by IOI, and like, what happens? How does he get out of here? I couldn't remember, but it's like, oh, he planned all of it.
My favorite part about
which is really far fetched.
Yeah. My favorite part about level 1 is just the world building, like 10 chapters of world building. And going back to the movie, that first 10 chapters of world building is compressed into like 2 lines where they just show the oasis. And we'll get into it in the movie section, but I might be long-winded there. But the world building in the book itself, I actually really love the first few chapters up until he finds the first key, the entrance to the first key. Just the way they describe the oasis, you get everything. Like James Halliday's will, then you get what is the oasis, what's the real world about, why does he go to school on Ludus, why can't he just run around the world and find the key, because he's poor, all that stuff, and it builds up to that first gate. Beautifully done, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Brent, I like what you said there, because one of the things I think Cline did really well in Ready Player One is build 2 worlds for us to explore very quickly and very well. I mean, like you said, the real world is interesting, and how, his reality and the poverty of living in the stacks, it was really interesting. And then also you have this brand new VR world to explore, which was awesome. I don't know. I agree with you 100% there that he built 2 worlds.
Yeah.
Super well, super quickly. Masterclass, really.
I did think it was fun too that the first key ended up being on the Ludus world. Like, that was a fun twist that I remember even when I read this the first time, that I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, anyone could have gotten this because every student has access to this planet. And it makes sense, like, logically, because I was thinking, I was like, I didn't really remember that it was on the Ludus when I did my reread, and I was like, oh yeah, like, it is here the whole time right in front of him. And I thought that was a really fun reveal.
That was genius too, because it's like he wanted he wanted a kid to be able to find it first, which I thought was really, really pretty cool.
Or someone like Wade who just had no money.
Yeah.
Like Ludus was a free planet, free public school that they created. And then as soon as he found that first key, it was just, he had what? I don't know, like 100,000 coins or something deposited into his account. Like Halliday made it so that anybody could find it. And then if you did, you would have the resources to continue playing the game.
Yeah. Have you guys ever played? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's where it kind of draws that Willy Wonka comparison, whereas like in Willy Wonka, it's like dumb luck that Charlie finds the golden ticket. But like this is kind of like Halliday's version of making sure that like everyone's got like a fair shot at finding this, whether you're a high level, avatar or not,
Yeah. And I do like the parallels to Ludus, which I think was a miss for the movie, in that the book is structured like a video game. Like you are stuck on the tutorial planet, and if you venture off somewhere else, usually you're gatekept out of there. But if you make it there, you're going to get your ass kicked, which is why Z doesn't go anywhere else, because he's so underleveled. And I like how that is structured. And then you always hit that point in a video game where the world opens up, you finally get some money, and you can go anywhere now. And it's a little bit overwhelming. And I thought that was a fun parallel to like how actually playing video games is, how the book was written.
Yes.
So I think that's why level 1 like really works in those ways.
Yeah, no, that's
me playing Breath of the Wild and getting distracted like by everything that I walk by. Yeah.
That's picking flowers in Red Dead Redemption 2 for 8 hours.
Yeah, that's pretty much every open world game. Oh man. Like, oh, hey, there's the next part of the story over there, but if I go left, I can spend 20 hours doing random tasks.
Yeah. I'm going to pet my horse for the next 3 hours and get nowhere.
So Ghost of Tsushima, I ran around the entire map finding the foxes only because I could pet them. That was it. And if I couldn't pet the fox for some reason, I got angry at the game, and I'd just be like, why?
What was the lack of animals in Ready Player One in the Oasis? It's no... I guess he mentions how there was like squirrels and stuff in the woods, which he didn't get credit for killing, which he said he tried to do.
You do. You do. You get a nut.
You get a nut.
Yeah, if you shoot the squirrels in Zelda, you get like an acorn. It doesn't yield meat, though. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, doesn't do anything.
No.
Squirrel meat's the best meat.
Brian and Sam, I want to ask you a question based on what Randy just said. This book came out in 2011, and there were like open world games back then. But I feel like it's really been the last like 7 or 8 years where open world games have just not only exploded, but completely transformed into their next evolution. Was this book kind of ahead of its time with the open world concept? Or do you think even back then, everyone knew where it was going and he just wrote it?
No, I think open world was kind of peaking at that point because we're on a downswing of open world. People are finding these massive games. Like you take Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I think that's the biggest map out there, or Red Dead Redemption. These are just games so big that it takes you forever to play them. So I remember in 2011, you still had your Assassin's Creed games. You had open world games like Red Dead Redemption 1, and they were popular enough that this makes sense in the context, especially if you're trying to build a universe.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I'm trying to think if he was probably writing this in the late 2000s, which is 5 years after kind of the initial boom of GTA, first Red Dead Redemption. Assassin's Creed was probably what got big in the mid 2000s.
So my only experience at the time that I read this, I wasn't really playing a lot of games, and so my only kind of experience with an open world game was like kind of my limited time with World of Warcraft. I played a little bit, and it was just like massive, just this massive world. And it's like, oh, so it's this, but different planets of this, like it's everywhere. And so I kind of got a feel for the scale of it that way, where it's like, man, that's nuts. Think about that. If they could manage something like that.
Yeah. Oasis is overwhelming. That's for sure. I wouldn't know what to do if I was there.
Oh, I'd go find the sex dolls, and that'd be the end of me.
The haptic sex doll.
Just
Well, that's the thing is like this is definitely a dystopia because I mean, obviously what's going on in real life sucks. You know, you got people living in, you know, stacks of mobile homes or trailers or shipping containers or whatever people are living in. And you know, most people are poor and basically strapped into this, you know, gaming system basically. But since it's, you know, what do they always say? Like whenever a new technology emerges, like people figure out a way to like make porn with it. Like, you know,
Rule
people would just
34,
be in there gambling, you know, all the vices, like, I mean, it's goofy, but like all the vices would be in there right away and hook those people that have, you know, addictive personalities towards those things. And, you know, man, society would grind to a halt.
Yeah.
You know,
literally,
you could just,
literally grind to a halt.
yeah, literally grind on your weird haptic doll.
Nick is
Man,
like, what
at
have I
least
got myself into?
And at least clean that thing.
No.
You know,
I know. Ugh.
it's self-cleaning. It just
How do you?
shoots
I don't even.
dishwasher safe.
Yeah, I do not think like the idea of being completely cooped up in a tiny apartment like that for, I think it was 6 months in the book. I just don't think that is feasible. Like I don't know how he did that.
But you gotta remember too, there are people today who are obsessed with video games to the point, like we always make the joke, living in your parents' basement playing World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
right? These people exist, and that's what Wade Watts is. He's somebody who's
Yeah.
obsessed with this game, which is the Easter egg hunt. So he takes his obsession right to the maximum level you can take an obsession, which is become reclusive from society. So it's really on character for what he's trying to portray Wade Watts or Parzival to be.
I guess that's a good segue to Parzival. I'm curious about your thoughts. Is he intended to be an audience avatar? Because in a way, he's kind of, he doesn't have a lot of defining features or sort of traits. He's kind of a little bit plain, and I'm wondering if that's intentional.
Well,
so if this book is about avatars, like, is he intended to be the avatar that you're kind of putting yourself into reading?
You said it yourself. The book is structured like a video game, and the video game avatar or the character you play in the video game is always structured to be the player. So you're taking the role. You're taking on the role of the protagonist of the thing. So I think the book was kind of built the same way. Parzival is the everyman.
Yeah. It's the same trope you see all the time in movies and TV. It's the unlikely hero.
Yeah.
The kid who has no reason to win anything, but is now 18 years old and defeating all of corporate America, you know?
I feel like I could take on the whole empire myself.
Just keep bringing it back.
How do I
I'm gonna keep
stop
doing
this
it.
camera?
I can give you host privileges to mute him.
He's the Luke Skywalker, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
Luke Skywalker, who watched his aunt and uncle die there and had no feelings about it. It's like, no, Uncle Owen, Aunt, what's your name? I got to go find an old guy.
But that's literally what Wade did.
Yeah, but exactly.
Literally what Wade did.
But Wade was built up to hate his aunt, though. He was in a situation where he didn't want to be there. He just had to be there because his mom died. Unlike, Luke Skywalker, who, why the hell didn't...
Whose mom died.
Yeah.
Had to be there because his mom died.
And his father died for as far as he knew, right? But, he was raised by his aunt and uncle there. And then when the whole thing burns down and he shows up, he's like, well, what do you know about that? Let's go find that old guy. And then, 10 minutes later, he's a master about the Force.
I'm still not sure if we're talking about Star Wars or Ready Player One right now.
Well, the story structures are really similar,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
It's a hero's journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's got elements of that for sure.
A similar conversation to Parzival. Sam, you mentioned that this time around you didn't like Halliday as much. And I think I felt the same, and that was very jarring than watching the movie, because I felt like in the book, Og is such a likable guy, and he's so great every time you come in contact with him. And he seems like the more stable one of the two.
Yeah.
And Halliday kind of has some questionable things going on, questionable decisions, but I feel like they really flipped that in the movie in a way. So I don't know.
I agree.
Do you think reading this book, you're supposed to come away that, Og is a good guy and Halliday, while a good guy, definitely flawed? Or is that just a growth in, a second reading experience?
I don't know. I think Halliday is generally good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you kind of see that, but here's the other thing is that the only people who get to see Halliday's true goodness or his weaknesses or his flaws or like the true reason behind the contest, which I think and generally has good intentions, because he wants to show Wade or whoever ends up winning the contest, don't make the same mistakes I did. I'm giving you the keys to this to make it a better place. But he's kind of couching that in all these, like I said, in like forcing, holding the world at ransom and forcing them to, dig into all of his 80s pop culture fascinations and stuff like that, is just like, come on, dude. I don't know if there's a better way. I mean, it has to be this way for the structure of the book, literally, right? Because that's what the author set out to do, is to have kind of a, like a pop culture love fest embedded in this story. But
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at it at a character level, he's not very sympathetic if you really dig into it, because he's just kind of, like I said, he's like a sociopath that just forces everyone to watch his TV shows and play his favorite games, which is kind of a shitty thing to do if you think about it. And Ogden Morrow is the one that is kind of helping to guide them along and kind of sees the quest for what it is. But they do flip that in the movie a little bit, don't they? Like Ogden is okay, but he's not the benevolent kind of character that he ends up being in the book. And then you actually, I think, seeing Halliday, I'm like, the name was escaping me, but seeing Halliday acted out by the actor who played him, his name is escaping me, but like that was done brilliantly. I thought his portrayal was really good. And so watching the movie, I kind of felt a little bit more for Halliday than I did Morrow. It's kind of a long-winded way of saying all that.
Yeah, I think they definitely pushed a more sympathetic angle to Halliday in the movie.
For sure.
Brian, what do you think? Like when you read this now, how do you kind of think about the dichotomy of Halliday Morrow?
I like how they portray Halliday as the, I guess for lack of better term, he's definitely on the spectrum, right? His inability to socialize with people without connecting them through fantasy, like with Kira, his, ability to talk to her came from playing Dungeons and Dragons, and that kind of leads into the first gate where they go to the Tomb of Horrors. But I honestly, like, I'm 1A, 1B on these two. They're a good team. I don't mind either of them in the book. In the movie, it's a different opinion completely. But no, I get why they kind of, they had a falling out, because obviously Halliday couldn't take the fact that Ogden Morrow ended up with Kira, and he didn't know how to express himself. Again, this is why I'm pretty sure he's on the spectrum. I'm not a doctor, but just seems like that's what he was going for. Was Ogden Morrow in the wrong to, take the girl that he knew Halliday liked and then, end up marrying her? I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Good friends falling out. Both have good stakes in the Oasis. It's just neither of them really stand out as the focal point of the story, really. It's just they're there. as plot devices when they need to be, especially near the end of the book.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's Holiday is designed as the obsession of all the Gunters, and Morrow's the solution at the end.
Do you think, and Randy, I'll throw this one to you. Do you think it's fair to say, based on, actually what Brian and Sam have just said, the reason that Halliday made everybody be so obsessed with the 80s pop culture that he loved is because that was the only way he could resonate and connect with people? And that was his way of trying to get people to connect in this virtual world, is by making them all have to focus on the same things in a world where everything's unlimited.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question for me as a person who obsesses over things, and like was that kid back in like when LimeWire first came out. I am downloading every single song and I'm experiencing literally everything I possibly can. So like I relate a lot to what Halliday is doing, and I understand his mindset of I want people to experience the things that I loved and structure. I thought it was really fun structuring a game around that. So I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, and more of an expression of this is how I related to the world. And as my last parting wish, I want people to see those things and appreciate them the way I did. And I do sympathize with him a lot in that regard, but I think that's also just because I'm a little bit like that. My only critique of Halliday is maybe just write IOI out as a potential winner.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
If
That
you
would
did
have
that
been
with
easy,
GGS, just put IOI out of it. And like, but then we don't, I think that takes out one of the most interesting elements of the story, which is like the corporatism aspect of this. And I think a really, it's weird to say fun theme, but it's an intriguing theme. So you can't write him out of it. But if I was, if this was the real world and I was like, buddy, maybe just exclude them, as there's a little bit too much of a monopoly at stake here. That's my only critique of Halliday, but I understand what he was going for with the pop culture stuff.
Yeah, it's like just an extra rule or two would have been fine.
Would have made for a boring book, though.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can pick out of here, and then you think about it, and it's like, well, I mean, the book is really boring without the pop culture references or the fact that there's a bad guy to cheer against, and like that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it has to be done for a plot to be driven forward. So I get it. It's like I said, it's one.
Yeah, you need the giant evil entity for everybody to hate. Otherwise, you're going to pick one of the high five there to hate.
Yeah, I think
I rock basically.
I mean, the guy who showed up
Which
with 1 page or 1 or 2 pages in the book, but was a focal center point of the movie. Yes, he's great.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, this might be a hot take. I kind of liked IROC in the movie.
We're not going to agree on that later.
He was funny. Yeah. It's that dude from it's
TJ Miller,
Silicon Valley.
TJ Miller, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Deadpool.
He's such a terrible person.
He's such a douchebag, but like he's good. He's good at acting like the kind of like sheepish, awkward.
He's good at acting like TJ Miller, kind of like The Rock is good at being The Rock. It's. Anyways, yeah. I think my rants about Star Wars has revealed that I might have some repressed anger over certain things. I'm going to try to tamper it down a little bit.
Oh, you're good.
Don't let it fly.
Let it. Yeah. Let the hate
give
flow.
Into your. Yeah. Let the hate flow.
Here we go. Again.
Makes you stronger.
Come to the dark side.
I came on
Brian.
the dark side.
Okay.
In the haptic doll.
Yes.
I'm interested in terms of this question Nick and I always discuss as kind of our ramp into the movie is, what do you think the movie had to do right to be successful? And as you think about adapting this book, what do you think that they had to get right for this movie to work?
They needed to do a lot differently than they did. Like, I understand the movie was never going to get all those pop culture references, but when Steven Spielberg was signed on to direct, I was like hopeful, because the guy has to have a pull in Hollywood right now. And there is a lot of references, and they're updated, and that's perfectly fine because you're aiming this at a younger audience as well. But the fact that they put everybody in one city. Like the whole movie takes place in Columbus, Ohio, but Wade Watts comes from Oklahoma City. Artemis comes from Vancouver, British Columbia. H is a wandering nomad in an RV, not a mail truck. The two Japanese kids are from Japan. And that's kind of like the outside world building, is that this oasis is a global thing. But in the movie, it's very centralized to the one city. The second thing is they glossed over the Ludus part. Like at the beginning when they're showing the oasis, they showed the planet Ludus, but I really wish they explained that the reason the oasis was so popular and the reason it was so used is because it is basically the economy. It is your birth, your learning, how you make money, all that kind of stuff. The other one, the curator in the movie and the characters they created, I wish they didn't. I wish they tried to stick as close as possible to like the spirit of the book. And that first key, the best part about the book was Wade Watts figuring it out while sitting in class. Holy crap, there's a key on this planet. I can get there by using like this roundabout means to get close to it. I'm going to find the key. The movie starts out and he walks up and he's like, there's a big race to go get the first key. Everybody knows where it is. And it's like, well, that's kind of pointless to like. And
then, oh no, it's like, and H almost misses it because he's like doing an arena shooter battle or whatever. It's like, H, you're going to miss the race. Like, what's this fucking race?
I'm going to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that just reminded me of the other one is Artemis becoming a central focal character in the movie. Just because you need a strong female lead. I didn't like how they put her in place of Wade Watts for the big, IOI indentured servitude chapter there.
Espionage.
And God. Yeah, so there's a lot about the movie versus the book. I really feel like because Ernest Cline was the one who wrote the script for the movie, I can't really say, he was disrespecting his own material because he can do what he wants with it. But he really kind of missed what made Ready Player One, the book, as special as it was. Yeah, I'm going to stop there so somebody else has a chance.
I almost wonder if what we got in the movie was a little bit closer to, because I didn't know that this was originally a screenplay before it was a book, or maybe I did and forgot that fact, but like, I wonder if the movie was a little bit closer to his original vision than what the book became, because the book would work as like a TV series where you would have more time to, take different parts of this story and flesh them out a little bit more. But when you really, and the movie is pretty long. It's like clocks in at like
2 hours, 9 minutes,
it's over 2 hours, which is pretty long for a movie. And it kind of got tiresome at times watching it. So there was a lot to cram in there. It's just interesting to think, and really, like Brian said, he's not disrespecting the material because it's all his material.
Yeah.
He just had the kind of, directorial cojones of Steven Spielberg behind it.
You ever see that episode of The Simpsons where comic book guy makes the comic book everyman, and then they turn it into a movie, and he goes from like, I want it exactly like I wrote it, to going Hollywood where he just doesn't care what the script is anymore? I feel like that's what happened with Ernest Cline in this movie. His integrity went out the window with each bag of cash had dropped on his front porch.
Nick, what do you think? What does this have to do to be successful?
Not be like the book, to be honest with you. I think some of the things that we're talking about that make the book so good make for garbage TV, right? The amount of exposition that would be needed to capture some of these book elements, you're just going to be sitting there watching somebody talk to you the whole time, because you can't show some of this background. You can't show what's going on in his head. You can't explain the things in the depth that he does. And I think, honestly, the decision to capture the essence of some of these things rather than exactly like the book was the right choice. However, I don't think it should have been adapted. Like, there are some books that just should not be adapted into the screen, especially in a time like 2018 was before we were getting these 10 episode adaptations of sci-fi and fantasy. So if it's a book to a movie, and that's like what the thing is. Maybe they should have just held off or not done it or thought about it a little bit more before pulling the trigger.
Yeah, give this the Game of Thrones treatment and like turn it into a series where you can really dive into it.
Yeah, and Game of Thrones was huge for changing how we adapted specifically sci-fi and fantasy. And if this had been adapted in 2022, I don't think we're having the same conversation we have today, because it's a 10-episode series on some streaming platform where you have the ability to flesh out exactly what Brian was talking about that made him love the book so much.
Yeah, I think what I bump up against, and when I think about the book that didn't translate well, or I thought was a really important thing to get across, is the actual like DNA of video games in the book. I don't think is actually translated well to the movie, and like that love of video games. It's completely stripped out in a way, and I can kind of walk through a lot of the other changes and see why they did it. Maybe not agree with it, but I can see why they did it. Or some I really liked, some I didn't like. Kind of Mara's character in the movie, I didn't love that change. But a lot of the other things I can see. But the really pulling out of, I think, the video game-ness of the book, I think was a miss for the movie overall, and I think lost a little bit of who this book was really written for and why, and people who liked it, and that kind of just didn't work for me, as we got into the movie.
Kind of seems to me like fans of this material, you either saw the movie and you're like, that was a fun movie, I like that movie because it had a lot of stuff in it that I liked, or you like the book. But I don't necessarily. Are there, the Venn diagram of like people that like both, or it's probably very slim.
Oh, the circles aren't even connected.
Yeah, it kind of feels like either like one or you like the other for whatever reasons that you have, and there's not a lot of crossover appeal.
I think one of the things about the movie that kind of really put me off of the movie was the awkwardness of people in the Oasis standing on the streets kicking air. And you go in the movie and they're flying all over the place, and it's just like this is beyond like ridiculous. Even the book describes that you have to have like you don't have controllers in your hands. You have to be part of a treadmill, or you have to be something inside of the Oasis to move around. So people standing in the middle of the road, it's like you're going to be sitting there kicking on the sidewalk and a dog's going to walk by. Next thing you know, you're punting it on the street, right? It's just so
the guy
awkward.
That's in the cafe falls out of his seat because he's like in the race or whatever. Like, you're really sitting at like an outdoor cafe strapped into this thing? I don't think so.
Yeah. Movie time. We'll just start high level thoughts. Brian, what'd you think of the movie?
Okay, so that was everything I think of the movie. That was positive. So I'm really tainted on the my thoughts. I'm really tainted on my thoughts of the movie because my wife is away at work, and I don't go to the movies by myself very often. But this is one I had to see on release date, and I built it up in my head so much because I thought they would kind of, because Ernest Cline was writing it, I thought he would be very true to the book as much as possible. And it started off great. You got Van Halen playing, everything's going great. And then it just goes downhill from there. It is almost generic in its plot structure. It's been done before over and over and over again. And like I said, I really feel like they missed the mark by not really building the world enough. I don't know what the Oasis is based on just the movie alone, because they kind of go over it with that narrative beginning, but they don't explain it the same way they explain in the book how it is almost a necessity of life. They explain it as people come in here because they want to work in the Oasis. And it's just, they didn't really tell the world outside of the Oasis. And they show it through the movie, but overall, I watched this movie only because I have to, but I think I've watched it for the last time in my life.
It was assigned.
Like,
it was assigned
I-
by Nick and Randy.
I want to go pirate this movie and then ask for my money back. That's how I feel about this movie.
Sam?
Man, everything that made the book interesting, they're not really able to translate into the movie. I think we may have said that in a different way before, but yeah, it is very, like Brian said, it's generic. I found it overlong and boring while I was watching it. I kept, a truly good movie you will watch and be kind of pulled in by. I found myself tapping. I was watching on my iPad last night. I found myself tapping the screen to like, how much time do I have left? It's like still a fucking hour. Like it just drags.
That last fight sequence takes 50 minutes.
It's insane. And there are aspects of that scene that are good, but mostly it's just kind of like, not to disparage the battle scenes in Lord of the Rings, because they're spectacular, but like it's just hordes of avatars rushing at each other and just like a bunch of chaos for a long time.
That's fan service. That entire scene is fan service.
Yeah. If you go frame by frame, I'm sure you can pick out like a ton of fun stuff in there, but like it happens, it's happening so fast that like, and it's already so long that I don't want to do that. At that point, I just don't care. If I want fan service for any specific thing, I'll just go be a fan of that thing.
Nick?
I think it's a good movie. I think it's a mediocre adaptation at best. Like if you look at them in isolation, because I saw the movie well before I read the book. So I'm coming from that perspective. I thought the movie was fun. It was kind of cool. It was Spielberg doing his thing. I had not read the book. After reading the book, I now think, this last watch was not as enjoyable for me having that context. And like I said, it's at best a mediocre adaptation.
I just want to chime in on
Brian.
Nick's comment there. And I've always actually thought that if I saw the movie before I read the book, I think the movie would have actually been pretty good. But because
it's fun.
Yeah. But because I walked in with these preconceived notions, I think I just kind of, ruined the movie for myself before I even saw it.
Yeah. I think what's tough is, and we are by no means experts, but
sure we are.
Done 27 of these. So like we've watched a bunch of these, and there's this thing that happens with an adaptation where if right out of the gate, you're kind of hit with some changes, it's almost like the defenses go up a little bit and you're like, whoa, like why are they making, and it's hard to like keep an open mind. And even we were DMing about this yesterday, Brian, where you were like saying to Sam, like, just keep an open mind during the watch. And like, you really have to, because if you start trying to just like clock the changes and thinking about why is that happening, it really does suck you out of it. But what I kind of like about this movie, and I would say I actually do like it, and I had a good time with it, is I thought it was earnest, which a lot of movies, that is like a hallmark of Spielberg movies, is that there's like a genuine earnestness to the characters and what they're trying to do and how that all comes together at the end. And there's something in me that likes that about Spielberg, of how that happens with his kind of children adventure-based movies, which this kind of falls into that camp. And it doesn't have kind of the, especially as this was coming out during that time, the kind of like quippy Marvel, jokey McJoke pants structure throughout that is like self-referential. Like it doesn't have that. And I appreciate that about this. And I thought they made some creative choices to adapt some things in this from what wouldn't work in a book, where like you probably can't have Parzival playing Joust or Pac-Man for like long stretches of time. Yeah. Like that's tough to do.
If you had every scene where it was like him playing adventure there, it would get boring.
Yeah.
It'd be tough, but yeah, I don't know. I'm in the middle where, like, Brian, you said, Ernest was a co-writer on this, heavily involved. So like he chose to do these changes. And Nick, I agree with you too, that like, it's a bad adaptation, but I kind of get why a lot of the changes were made. I don't know if they all entirely worked for me. They probably all didn't, but I had a good time with it. It's not something that I'm going to want to fire up again today by any means. But like if it was like a family movie night and we needed to throw something on that everyone might enjoy, this is a solid.
This is a movie I would put on if I wanted everybody to talk through the movie.
Hey, actually, I got a nice trolling question for you two.
Yeah.
What Shining adaptation was better? The
Shut
Stanley
up.
Kubrick Shining or the Shining that they threw into here?
Honestly, the one in this, like,
Yeah, it's pretty fun, right?
yeah, it's way better because it's not a true adaptation of The Shining. Whereas Stanley Kubrick took something I loved and shit on it for 2 hours.
I do actually like, in all honesty, though, I actually do like the scenes where it happens in the battle and it happens in the Shining scenes where like the Sixers kind of invade the Shining set, and then they're all getting just absolutely massacred by all the shit that was happening, and you can see it in the IOI offices of like their haptic rigs turning red and stuff as they're all dying.
I thought the Shining part of this movie was the best part. Like,
it was fun,
hands down. I thought it was like the most creative, and I have kind of a take that if they would have chosen 2 more things like that and went really deep on them in terms of their references, where you go fully into the Oasis and you have this immersive experience to get the keys, I think it would have been a way better movie if they chose that instead of kind of the rest of it was all a mishmash, because it was so cool. And like the joke where you just said, Sam, where like the guy is like standing above all the Sixers and he's like, what's going on down there? And he's like, they're all in The Shining and it's just pandemonium on the Sixers.
They're all scared. And
like the old lady's just like on top of all of them chopping them. It was really funny.
Yeah, I agree with you, Randy. If they had picked 3 movies and made those the 3 gates, the technology was out there at the time to transpose somebody into an old movie. And God, I would have loved to see them take on like War Games and Holy Grail. That would have just been
a Holy Grail
absolutely
so much fun.
Yeah, or why not do a video game? Like, if it's hard to make people playing video games exciting, which we talked about on The Wizard, shout out for the episode on Retrotopia.
Yeah.
Why not just go into a video game like he had to do, I think, for the second key in the book? Like,
yeah,
why
that
not
was the Black Tiger game.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Leisure Suit Larry.
I enjoyed that part of the book.
Get use out of that haptic girlfriend.
Haptic doll required. You don't have the correct peripheral to complete this challenge.
Yeah.
Go get a
Increase
second-hand
thrust.
one. Yeah.
I don't know. It felt like a missed opportunity.
That brings me back to that first key that everybody knows where it is, and it's just a race, and nobody figures out to drive backwards except for Wade, who just happens to remember Holiday saying, "I wish I could go back," and that was his entire clue. It was so thin that it just, I don't know, it just hit me wrong.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, how, in terms of a movie, how do they do the first? I guess you just have him in school and there's some sort of realization like he has in the journal scene in the movie that causes him to go there. Like, I think it could work. And I think all they really had to change in the movie was the actual game he plays when he gets there to make it a little bit more movie immersive. But I think what works for the actual movie is like they clearly wanted to kick this off with a bang.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have Van Halen pumping, you're getting thrown, the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. Spielberg is pulling, he owns all the IP to this. So he's pulling that in, and King Kong, like all the Universal monsters. So like they're just trying to build the excitement of the world, where I think they thought they just couldn't do that with sitting in Ludus, I guess.
Oh, they didn't even have to have Ludus in the movie. Like, that whole thing could have just been part of the narrative beginning where they explain the Oasis.
Yeah.
And honestly, they could have done like a 2-3 minute narration and then just had Wade like he was right at the first key. And what's lacking is the clues. There's no mystery in it at all. And that was the best part about the book, was the connection from the little limerick there, or whatever you want to call it, the clue, to the actual key.
That makes the that makes the adaptation even more confusing, I guess. If you're coming into it not having the background of the book, is like the first key was, yeah, he kind of had to figure out the trick to it, but everyone already knew where the key was. It's just a matter of reaching it. And it's like all of a sudden now they have to figure out stuff like what, like it's a riddle, like the second and third
explain that in
keys
the narrative.
Yeah.
In the beginning, he talks, he says that some kid figured out where the key was, and then everybody knew, and since then everybody's been trying to. So it was kind of a reference.
So
to
the race resets every day or whatever, and
yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, I missed that. It's easy to miss stuff too in a movie. Yeah, like if you blink and you miss it. Like I always think, if you've only watched the Harry Potter movies and you've not read the books, like you probably. I know for a fact that you're missing a ton of stuff. Like there's all kinds of world building and stuff in there that it just isn't present in the movie because you can't fit it.
Yeah. You know what would have really worked would have been if they opened it similar to Indiana Jones, where it's just Parzival, on the hunt for the clue. He's already there trying to figure it out. Action scene,
Yes.
But it's just a shame that Steven Spielberg didn't have the relationship to the director of Indiana Jones to be able to pull those strings that do something like that. I don't know. It's like he's never done that before. So how could we expect him to do it this time?
You make a great point, right?
But then we would have gotten that cool scene, and that's like my favorite when he's going through that. He's going through that D&D module that's hidden on the school planet, and there's like a Lich King in there, and he's got just the image of him, and they even call it out how ridiculous it probably looks in the book is like. He's standing next to this like skeleton king up against an arcade cabinet, like playing 2-player. It's just like, I wish that would have been translated into a movie. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, Brian, you said what you loved about the book was, especially in the beginning, was that world building. And I expect that the decision they made with how to start this movie was, how do we immediately show everyone who's sitting here watching this movie that this Oasis world is full of all these pop culture references, and they designed that around this race where they can just throw in all these ways to work it in. It's probably what the decision was there, because if they're like, okay, if Z's on his own in a tomb, we can't really fully explain the world in that way. So I guess that's what happened there.
Oh, the hedge fund Hollywood guys got involved, and they, pressured to have more action rather than story. Because a lot of this movie is just baseless action for the purpose of, like I said, fan service.
Yeah. One change I did like. Sorry, you were going to say something, Nick?
No, I was going to say to that, I think the movie is intended to have a different audience than the book here.
And good point.
Randy alluded to it earlier. We've done this 27, 28 times now, whatever. There's only been 2 of those where if you are a fan of the book, like a true fan, the way you are of Ready Player One, that you'll actually enjoy the adaptation. And it was Jurassic Park and Harry Potter. And everything else has been a dud. And the books we've covered that we've loved, we talk about it. We're disappointed always because they're just, you're not making it for the diehard fan of the book. You're making it to mass appeal to 200 million people.
Yeah. I mean, especially when it's a Spielberg who's the blockbuster king of American cinema. So this has to appeal to everyone. And I watched, there was a behind the scenes I was watching with him on this, where he's a noted video game fan, which is even more confusing how this movie turned out. Like there's stories of him on the set of Jaws where they were like missing filming days because him and Richard Dreyfuss were playing Pong like out too late at the bar. And so he's a video game guy, but he says in this interview, he's like, I wanted to make this so if you've never played a video game in your life, you would enjoy and understand this movie. And on part of me is like, that's not who this story is for. 2, like everyone has at some point played some sort of video game, even if it's a short amount of time to understand. Like, I just feel like that's dumbing it down a little too much for me.
This isn't something you can appeal to the lowest common denominator, because if you don't like video games, you're not going to go seek out a movie that's video game centric. You know what I mean? Like that's not who it's for, and that's not who it needs to be for.
Yeah.
It's
Not to be, and that sounds gatekeepy, but it isn't meant to be. You know what I mean?
That's one of my problems with video game adaptations into movies is they tend to try to make it for the broader audience and not really for the fan of the medium. And it's understandable. Like, you want to make money, right? You don't want just people who watched or played The Last of Us to watch The Last of Us. You want to expand your audience. But this movie feels the same way. It tries to pluck the people you wouldn't expect to go see this movie and try to draw them in to go see it by using like nostalgia references. Well,
Yeah. Should we talk about the cast a little bit in this?
let's talk about the cast.
Who we liked? Yeah. How did we feel about the lead, Ty Sheridan?
I like
Man, if this go ahead. Sorry.
mine's really quick. I'm going to say I like the cast of this movie because I actually didn't know any of the actors before I went into it. Like I couldn't reference the fact that Ty Sheridan was Cyclops in X-Men. I didn't know that until I started looking it up.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Was he really?
Yeah, I love movies that don't have the big draw star that's just simply the Chris Pratts or the Chris Hemsworths or the Chris Evans or anybody else named Chris.
Or anybody named Chris.
It doesn't have the generic character like The Rock, who's just there to be The Rock. I did actually like.
I was
the
just
casting.
happy that. Yeah, I was just happy that Wade Watts wasn't like Jesse Eisenberg or whatever.
Oh
like,
God,
it would have been so easy to just throw him in there, and he's your typical
Social
everyman.
Network.
Jesse Eisenberg. I don't know how he's an actor.
He's just such a bland, like everyday kid or whatever that they can just throw him in anything, and he's awkward enough to like. Whatever. Like, we don't need to shit on him. He didn't do anything wrong.
That's the bonus episode.
He just wasn't in this.
I say he literally wasn't in the movie. Like,
that's how bad of
it's
an
like,
actor
How'd you
he
feel
is.
about the cast? Fuck Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Like, but he would have been a good Wade Watts though. Or am I wrong here?
You are wrong.
He's just
I don't know. Wade Watts is like, especially if I'm thinking the parallels to Social Network, like, I don't know if Z's like a good guy. And Jesse Eisenberg in that movie, not a good guy.
Yeah.
Like Mark Zuckerberg, not a good guy. He could have pulled it off, maybe.
I absolutely 100% would not have seen this movie if What's His Nuts was in it.
Do we have any thoughts outside of Jesse Eisenberg?
I would say Mendelsohn, right?
Yeah.
He's so good, Ben Mendelsohn.
He's the best part of the movie.
He is just, I don't think I could ever see him in a movie where he plays a good character. He just oozes evil.
Mm-hmm. He oozes it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Inspired casting for this. Because in the book, when I first read this, I wasn't sure if Sorrento was kind of a red herring, like the clearly evil guy. Maybe he's not actually evil. And then I realized as we went that no, he is just evil, and which is fine. Like, you need a bad guy. And I like how in the movie they added some humor to him just being like a little bit of an idiot too, like keeping his password right on his haptic chair, and his like password is like Bossman69. Like all the scenes with Ben Mendelsohn were like really funny.
And that scene where he's talking to Wade when they have the meeting and they have to like, the what do they call them, like oologists or whatever, the egg hunter, like people have to feed him pop culture references. He's like, I love Ferris Bueller and all this pop culture stuff. I'm just a corporate suit, but I like this stuff too. I like to relax or whatever. It's like so disingenuous, and you can still see through it.
You know, when I want to blow off steam,
drink tab, play Robotron, listen to Duran Duran.
I crack open a tab. I put on some Duran Duran. I play Robotron. That's why I love the Oasis, because it's just full of all.
That line he gives is so funny that he's fed. I can't remember what it is. He's like, you don't think I like to
pop a tab and play he's like, play whatever Atari game and listen to some Duran Duran or whatever. It's just like, oh God, they're just so.
Yeah, that's literally that Steve Buscemi meme there. Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah, fellow young people. Yeah,
it was so good. That negotiation. I don't know, Brian. You said you liked that a lot in the book. Did you like the negotiation scene in the movie?
I did. I like how they kind of built it up. They gave him an out, and then just that moment that he uses his real name, and there's that realization that, well, this is now being affected outside the Oasis. You don't have the protection of, just restarting your character. I feel that it was a necessary part. I also feel like they didn't do it well in the movie. Just he gets a message and he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go talk to this guy. This guy who I've said I don't like from the outset of the movie. I'm going to go visit him, and then I'm going to be cocky about it. Like the book wrote it better, where he did it just to kind of try to find out information about him. But that's also where the movie doesn't separate the characters, like the main characters, as much as the book did. Like Artemis really kept herself away from any emotions with Parzival. H kind of disappeared for a little bit till the end of the book, and that was the friendship falling out. And none of that happened. They get one key, and all of a sudden they're best friends. And how Shido and Dido, or whatever their names are, they were written into the movie. Just like, oh yeah, and these other two guys got the key over here, and yeah, we're best friends now. Pew 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 pew. Oh, also these Japanese guys, they live in Columbus too. Who fucking knew?
Yeah, just
It's also the change to like have Daito lose his avatar versus actually dying.
Yeah,
really changes the stakes here.
That
right, like that was a bold strategy to change that.
That was the catalyst of Wade getting himself indentured and having that final scene where he breaks out of the IOI office and sets up a means to take down the Orb of Osirok. But in the movie, it's just like your avatar died. Like, oh no, you have to restart.
Which, by the way, that Orb of whatever, Osirok, did you guys catch that when Artemis was like, there are so many, both book and movie, there are so many fun little nods to stuff. And I think it's almost harder to catch in the movie because you're having to catch it with audio cues or spotting it real quick. But Artemis, when she's giving the counter spell, is the spell from Excalibur.
Yeah.
It's like, oh dang. That's so cool. Cause you hear that, like, it's kind of like the, is it the day the earth stood still, where they say like Klaatu, Barada, Niktu, and then you hear that in like a bunch of stuff. It's the same thing. It's that like Anal Nakroth, whatever, like
Krav Maga.
Yeah, it's Merlin's spell. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. There definitely is nothing meaningless in terms of like those references in the movie, where like if there's going to be a line of dialogue, there's going to be some subtext to it that it references, which I think it is fun to dive into.
Yeah, there's stuff all over the place. Like I said, you could, no matter what point in the movie you're at, you can almost freeze frame it and just look for stuff in the background. I'm sure there's a ton of it.
Can we talk about Simon Pegg in this? I love Simon Pegg. I'll get that out here. He is not what I pictured for Og at all. Like, I was picturing more of a Steve Wozniak looking guy, especially as that's the reference they make early in the book.
Yeah.
And Simon Pegg was just not what I imagined. And I love the actor, but it just really did not work for me.
Good actor.
Maybe he was just having a bad day, but he just played it off crotchety, but that's not really what you wanted from Og. He had that tragic, background of losing his wife and his, estrangement from his best friend and that kind of thing. But still, he was like a good-natured, kind-hearted, in the book. And then in the movie, he's just like, meh, we got lawyers here. They're going to want to talk to you.
I don't like when he does an American accent. It just feels wrong. It's not that it's bad. It just feels wrong to me. Just stick with your British accent.
Don't appropriate our accent.
Go to the Winchester. Wait till this all blows over.
I say that, and every time Alan does his like American accent, I'm like, oh, you do an American accent better than any of us do.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't work for me. Nick, did you like Simon in this?
I actually did. It was fine for me. Again, seeing this before reading the book, it was just, this is the character, and the character was executed consistently, which made it pretty good for me.
Yeah, I will say a big thing that they had to do with this movie was how do you convert Anorak's journal, which is Halliday's journal, into a visual medium. And I thought that the way they did that in this movie was extremely creative and a really cool choice to live out all of these scenes of his past.
Yes.
And I thought that really worked. I liked it a lot because I don't know how they would have done it otherwise. And I don't know, maybe I'm an easy mark, but I like the twist that he's the curator. It did work for me.
I thought it was fine. I mean, there's no other way to do it in the because you lose the whatever chat room H has is not in the movie at all. So you have to find a way to insert Og somehow. And I thought that was a clever way to do it. I don't mind adaptation, bits like that. It's fine.
Going to agree. I actually did enjoy the curator as the means and the way they adapted the journal. Probably the best way they could have done it to make it visually appealing, especially since you can go in and see videos of what goes on.
It's really fun.
Yeah. As for the big reveal at the end, I caught something in my first watch through that kind of gave it away for me. So, yeah. I wasn't super surprised, but at the same time, it was kind of a nice little twist to use Ogden Morrow properly, I guess would be the way. Oh, and that thing that gave it away was Simon Pegg's voice. The British accent. Yeah.
Oh,
I was like, hey, that's Simon Pegg. And then I'm like one of those notorious IMDb looker-uppers during the middle of a movie. And I'll be like, oh, hey, he plays Ogden Morrow. Well, fuck, there goes that.
Yeah. Lispo.
Guess I'll go to the bathroom now.
Yeah. I mean, we referenced a little bit earlier too. They bring the group together way earlier in the movie.
And they've changed.
They're all friends
They're all friends. I imagine when they were working through the logistics of a movie, they're like, unless we don't have Artemis, we never show Olivia Cook like in her human form. How are we going to do this unless we're having these separate storylines happening? They were like, we don't want to hire this actress and then have it be her just Oasis avatar the whole time because they don't meet each other the last 4 pages of the book in person.
Right.
So I think that was the decision, but it's jarring after reading the book. 100%.
Still think they could have done it. Like, if we're talking about the characters, I'll get to Artemis last, but H in the book is not some gigantic mechanic who builds the Iron Giant for people. They completely changed that character. They did nothing with the 2 Japanese kids. Basically, they're just there to be the cool for the anime fans, I suppose. But with Artemis, they really could have kept her avatar through most of the movie, but as Wade and her interacted like they do in the book, Wade starts learning more and more about her until he sees a picture of her. And the big reveal could have been that wine-stained birthmark that she's always embarrassed about. Like, be honest, that was kind of the best part of them meeting was, Wade already knew everything about her. And when he met her, he's just like, I don't care about this. But in the movie, they didn't even really explain the birthmark or her hatred of it. She just kind of shows up one day. And the way they meet too was, again, Artemis in the movie goes, I don't clan up, but in the real world, she has an army. So,
and they all clan up instantly.
Yeah.
Right. She's like, welcome to the rebellion or whatever. And I don't know. I think that maybe in the book it's different a little bit because she really is ashamed of the birthmark or whatever. But like in the movie, it's like a total cop out. It's like she's got some like slight discoloration over one eye, but she's still cute. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah. This is like Hollywood ugly.
The point is like it's supposed to like unless you are already like it's supposed to show that Wade is in love with her on a deeper level and like looks aside, like obviously in the book she's still cute too, like whatever, but she's more ashamed of it in the book. Another thing they did with Artemis that I really didn't appreciate was the scene where they're in that nightclub and she's like kind of like touching up on Wade and is like, does your haptic suit do this or whatever? And she's like touching all over him. I'm like, she wouldn't seduce him like this.
When she said the
it's just
crotchet
really
plays, though.
yeah, it's just like, my God.
Yeah, shout out
I
to the
half expected Wade to just be like,
yeah, shout out to the
like
guys who had
American
to
Pie.
test
jizz in your
those.
pants moment.
Yeah. Shout out to the guys who had to test those haptic suits for crotch ability. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, how do we?
Oh, and then when Sorrento
Yeah.
gets kicked in
Too
the nuts
sensitive,
later.
too sensitive.
How do we
Yeah.
turn this thing into like something that could permanently damage somebody? It's like, oh, okay, let's just shock them right in
Turn
the
this thing
balls.
off. I'm dry.
I'm done.
But yeah, just some of the character beats in the movie didn't hit for me, and I really didn't like that they played off on Artemis's, quote unquote hotness to, that's very out of character for her to use her sexuality to get what she wants out of Wade. Just didn't hit for me.
Yeah.
Didn't like it.
Because in the book, she has multiple things that are the opposite of that, where she starts a clothing line for plus size women in the book.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's
supporting-
supposed to be, I guess curvy or whatever. And they just completely of course, Hollywood, it's like, well, we can't, this was before the time when it was kind of okay to represent people as they're actually look or are shaped. And it really shows it's kind of dated.
I didn't like when they added characters to fill in the gaps of the book versus adaptation holes. Like Hannah John Kamen put in there as the IOI, basically military leader who gets the people to put him in indenture. That was just shoehorned in there. And of course, now Sorrento and her are working together. What was the other one? TJ Miller, IROC. And my thoughts on TJ Miller aside, the character IROC was nothing in the book. He was simply there as the catalyst to make the, Parzival known who Parzival was, which kind of set off IOI to be able to find the first key. But in the movie, he's there as a main central character. He is the one who finds out Wade's real name. He's the one who activates the Orb of Ozarok and finds it. Him and Nolan Sorrento are portrayed as best friends. It's just, for taking such a minor character of the book and turning him into some sort of main, underboss, I guess you'd call him. I didn't like that. I didn't like the character IROC in the book. Obviously, he was not meant to be liked. And I found him in the movie to be just a plot device so that they could fill in gaps when needed.
He definitely was used as that. I don't know why. It still kind of made me laugh, like everything IROC was doing in the movie. It kind of worked, but he was definitely just there to propel the plot forward in some certain areas. What I will say that I liked, we talked about how we did not like level 2 in the book, or not like, but it was the least of our favorite.
Bottom 3.
They steamrolled through all of level 2 in the movie. It was basically level 1, level 3 in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of happy we didn't have to deal with mopey Z in this, kind of spurned by Artemis. I'm very happy that we didn't have to get that. It worked for me in that regard, and him being isolated, I think that worked for me. I kind of liked that they took some of the fun world building parts of level 1, put that in, and then build out level 3 a little bit. I don't know where I'm at on the Artemis, infiltrating. I get that if Z was doing all of this, what are kind of the other characters doing at that time? I'm sure there's something they could come up with them to do. But it is unfortunate because that was my favorite part of the book, was Z's kind of infiltration and changing how that kind of happens. It loses a little bit of its luster, but it's still fun for me that at least Artemis is getting to do that while Z and H are doing other things.
In the book, it was Ocean's 1 because it was just him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could have been a cool movie twist if they played it the same way.
It would have been fine.
Movie-wise, I don't mind that they used Artemis for that because they're using her basically as the, the female heroine. So, yeah, making it the way they did, it's absolutely fine. As a fan of the book, I really would have loved to see them adapt that scene more faithfully. And just kind of set it off in such a way that it really sets the conclusion of the movie up, but it didn't in the movie for my liking.
I like the idea that in the book he's a tech support drone. That makes it more mundane to me.
It also hits closer to home.
Yeah, but then they had Artemis doing, like manual labor for setting up their. I mean, I guess it's a device that moves forward that she knows where they are, and she's like, well, they're outside of, this castle here or whatever. But it's like, I liked the look into the, I guess, dystopic reality that, IOI is like very much a corporate, system that's just sucks out all your humanity.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the movie does a worse job at reflecting the corporate dystopia that's going on and all of that espionage that happens. That's that cool stuff we get the insight when he goes undercover. What I think the movie plot-wise for me drove home a little bit better towards the end was the Oasis is not somewhere we should all be spending time, and this is not a good thing. And I like Z's rejection of that, which I think is a little stronger in the movie at the end.
Oh yeah.
Than in the book. And I, as someone who wrote this book and is tugging on all of our kind of nostalgic heartstrings of our childhood and things that we loved and video games and wanting to spend time with them, I like that his kind of theme at the end is you can't spend your life living in fake worlds. And as much as I love escapism, I can't spend my life doing that. And I think the movie drove that home at the end a little with a finer point than the book did. And I appreciated that about the movie.
I like the last line of the book where Wade basically says he no longer has a desire to be in the Oasis. Versus the movie where it's like, well, we've decided to take it away from everybody Tuesdays and Thursdays, even though some people might need those days as the only days they can go into it, right?
That was my first thought, was like, what if you work a job where like Thursday is one of your off days? It's like, sorry, we decided to arbitrarily close the Oasis for the entire planet on that day.
What if your job is inside the Oasis and now you're losing 2 days of paychecks?
Well, that's true too. Like they've built it as this completely immersive thing where people can make real actual currency. It's basically like the Oasis coin turns into like a cryptocurrency that's accepted everywhere. Like now you're impacting people's livelihoods. It's like a slippery slope where like once you've kind of like crossed that threshold, you can't pull it back now, because that's become part of how people, it's like the internet, like the internet exists now we can't exist without it. It would be very jarring to be like, well, the internet's turned off on Thursdays. Like, why?
Yeah, he's like, we made a unpopular decision to shut off Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's like, yeah, because that only works for you. See?
Right. Yeah. I don't have anything going on Tuesday. Don't worry. I don't need to record any podcasts. So
got a question for you about the end of the movie. Did anybody notice the Joust poster and the Rush poster in Holiday's room there, right beside the big red button?
Yeah, they did a nice job of showing the things that they couldn't bring in as Easter eggs throughout the movie. It was littered with them, which was cool. And I did appreciate that.
And the glossing over the big red button. Oh, by the way, this button shuts it down. Oh, he's in a truck where he's being bounced around. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I love that he almost hits it, and then like the Halliday and True like kind of space case form is just like, try not to hit it on your first day or whatever. Like,
maybe Halliday isn't autistic. Maybe he's just a stoner. Like,
he does kind of play it almost stoner. Yeah. But here's another thing that I think is I don't know if it's explored in the second book or not, but it's very heavily implied that Halliday is not truly dead, that he's uploaded his consciousness into that. He's not a simulation.
I think that was,
and that's hinted at.
I think that was a means to be, if this movie is successful enough, we're going to do a second one. And it wasn't long after the movie came out that Ernest Cline pumped out Ready Player 2. And Ready Player 2 really feels rushed.
It's not good. Sorry.
We kind of blew through casting and plot
sorry.
discussing there.
That's Sam's
No.
fault.
All good stuff. All good
Yeah,
stuff.
it is. I'm sorry.
No, I was just letting it go. So, Nick, do you have any nominees for best casting?
Olivia Cooke was probably my favorite, and I'm going to throw her in there. I'd also throw Ty Sheridan in there, Simon Pegg, and why am I blanking on this last one?
Ben Mendelsohn.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Those are the only 4 good actors in the movie.
Oh, I
They're the only
disagree.
ones that you
Whoever
spent
played-
enough time with.
Whoever played Halliday, I think, belongs in there too. I can't recall his name.
Mark
But I think
Riley.
he should
Mark
be in the
Rylance.
discussion.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'd probably go Ben Mendelsohn. I don't know what you all would say.
Me too,
He'd be my number 1.
for sure.
Yeah, I thought he
Yeah,
just brought a lot. He seemed to step above everyone else.
Does he play Krennic in Rogue One without this movie as kind of a, like a litmus? Sorry, Brian. I mentioned Star Wars again, but like he is the same exact corporate asshole, like Empire shill in Rogue One, and he is basically a, ends up being kind of not powerless, but kind of, I don't know how to describe it. He's got all the power, but he's somehow not effective despite all of the tools that he has at his fingertips.
Yeah. It's a good comp. He plays it perfectly. Like you kind of get all that through his performance.
I like how he comes off awkward uber nerd who's trying to be cool. It reminds me of a real life billionaire who's been in the news lately.
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah.
No names.
Yeah. Would definitely be running Iowa.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of is running Iowa.
Kind of is running.
I'm sorry,
any dissent?
X.
Yeah, sorry. Any dissent on Ben Mendelsohn as the best cast person in this movie?
I think he's
he's
perfect.
the guy I'd go with.
You'd love to hate him.
Yeah. We always give out the best scene award in the plot area. I'm going to start listing. Let me know if I miss anything. Would you consider the opening scene as a contender for best scene in the movie? We get the pumping of Van Halen into the race. Does that qualify? Brian, are you axing that nominee?
No, I'd qualify that. Like I said, that was a moment I actually I was like right peak wanting to watch this movie because when the Van Halen hit, I was into it right away.
Me too. It's hard.
Brian's other nominee is the end credits. That's all he's got.
Me too. It's like, oh, finally.
No, even the credits were a little overblown for me.
Into the haptic suit.
Yeah.
Second scene. I would go next. The negotiation with Sorrento for all the reasons we described earlier. It's just funny, and that line feeding from the other people. It just cracked me up. And it was the first time we got to see Sorrento really kind of flexing Ben Mendelsohn flexing his kind of comedic chops in the movie. So I'd put that in there.
It's definitely
The Shining.
Shining for sure. That was the one I would suggest.
I just thought it was the most creative in terms of making it a part of the plot as well. Not only with Z and the gang, but the Sixers. And then also just dropping into different scenes in the movie with like when they're in the maze. Like it was just
Well,
really
I love how
That was the way that they could capture. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I love how they incorporated the characters like H and all them into the scenes of the movie, like the blood coming out of the elevator there, and H gets swept away. That was really well done. H's hand in front of the nude
bad
scene.
at watching horror movies. Oh, yeah.
What would you say, Brad?
I said H's hand in front of the nude scene, just so they could,
Yeah, it was like the comedy of H having never seen The Shining and going through these scenes was really hilarious.
That was
he hates.
I'm
horror
gonna
movies.
reel back a little bit here, but that was actually one of the things that got me in the movie was the three of these three characters were supposed to be on par with their knowledge of like Halliday and the Easter egg. The scene where Artemis is like completely dumbfounded as Parzival explains something about Holiday in the second the Jade Key. It got me as that why they're supposed to be, challenging each other. In the book, H and Parzival always challenge each other on this kind of information, and H just seems so dumb in the movie. Just like absolutely no knowledge and is along for the ride, and it's just a bit of an insult to the character.
Fourth scene I would throw out there. Backup arrives in the battle scene. I feel like it has to be a contender. I'll be honest, the army running over a hill, it just always works for me. I always get excited when I see an army coming.
It's a little bit Braveheart, a little bit Lord of the Rings,
Well, I love that for the fan service. Like, there's a couple of times I pause just to scan, like, Battletoads are in there. What kid knows Battletoads nowadays? That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was good. And then the final one, I would just say kind of the end as a whole, kind of him, getting the egg, his final conversation with Halliday in his room. Classic Spielberg, very sentimental, kind of you go out feeling good. What would you say is the best scene in this movie?
I mean, I think we might all be in agreement that it's the Shining sequence here, and that was just beautifully done. It was a nod to, I think, more of the book than some of the other scenes. So I think that's where I'm going there.
I think that Shining scene was a really good way to portray both how he had to fully act out War Games and Monty Python. Yeah. Like, that's really hard to describe, but that kind of fits in a visual medium to kind of be like, oh, they're interacting with kind of basically a movie set. Really, they're not going line for line, but it kind of captures the same essence. But I'd say like either that or a close second for me is the negotiation with Sorrento was my second, but definitely Shining first for me.
No, I agree full-heartedly.
Also, I like the Inception scene too, where they put Halliday in a simulation within the simulation. I thought that was fun. That was a good one.
And the drawn, I messaged this to you guys, was like, oh, these drawn Pulp Fiction, like massive silencer pistols is pretty fun.
That was good. I'd probably go that one as well. World building and aesthetics. How do did they bring the Oasis to life well? You enjoy it from that end?
Thought it was cool.
I thought the opening scene where he's crawling out of the stacks and you can see how different people are interacting. There's like one lady that's like pole dancing.
Yeah.
I found the people mimicking their actions in the real world kind of awkward. Like the guy who dies and flips over his couch. Things like that. I don't know. The people kicking air on the street. I get embarrassed by that. But at the same time, world building itself, I think it did a good enough job for what it needed to tell the audience. It didn't need to build the world as good as the book did, but I do think they kind of compressed it. Obviously, Columbus, Ohio being the focal point of the entire world. Leave it to the United States to call themselves the center of the universe, right? We now know it's in Columbus, but no, it's the Oasis itself. Again, it's not, if you're not going to use the different planets with the different games and stuff like that, you can really narrow it down, and they did that. So for the purpose of the movie, it was good enough.
Brian's criticism of people flailing in their Oasis rigs or whatever just reminds me of that meme with like that's not how any of this works. Like,
yeah, when Z like does like the running wall kick in the van, I was like, while wearing the goggles, I'm like, I don't know if I'm buying this in the movie, but it works for a visual. One thing, world building did not work for me, or I guess it works. They're trying to portray Holiday as a good guy, but they say that he uses Oddjob in 007.
Yeah,
to me, that's just bullshit. Unacceptable. Like,
no,
anybody who uses Oddjob, you're on the no-fly list.
Yeah, that line pissed me off. That was like someone who doesn't understand video games came up with that. Like, just kind of surface level Googled something and was like, oh, Oddjob was a character in GoldenEye that was a popular shooter. So like GoldenEye would not be his favorite shooter. It would have to be like Quake 2 or something like that. Like, come on.
No,
like,
GoldenEye was in the scope of shooters of that era. I mean, you got Halo, you have the Call of Duty series. I mean, GoldenEye fell off the chart really quickly once, twin stick shooters came about, because we played GoldenEye and it doesn't hold up. It's fun.
I mean, we all love GoldenEye, but man, the arena shooter is Quake, is the original. Like, let's not.
But GoldenEye does have the best escort mission, though, in video game history.
Well, thanks for having us there, Randy. We'll talk to you never again.
You're gonna break us again. You want to talk about Animaniac? God.
Soundtrack. How do we feel about the soundtrack of the movie?
Liked it,
Brian.
I liked it. Again, I'm a big fan of like old 80s rock and 70s rock, and you start anything with Van Halen and I'm just going to be pumping my fist in the air. And from that point, the soundtrack fit the movie quite well.
Yeah, some of the I always take issue when it's like, you can when the soundtrack is so kind of cookie cutter that it could be from any movie. Like, this is kind of what this felt like. It was just like a lot of surface level, just 80s music that could have been from like a rom-com, for crying out loud. Like, it was fine, but it did what it needed to do, I guess.
Yeah.
I agree with Van Halen though I would have liked Panama.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part, as I enjoy 80s music, but it's like probably the number one song on every one of these artists' Spotify they chose. Alan Silvestri is the composer. He's a big name. He's the Zemeckis, he's always paired with him. The Back to the Future, Forrest Gump. He did all the Marvel, movie, or the Avengers movies at least. So I think like what this kind of leads me to is, in some ways, it's like the sum of the movie is not as great as the parts, where they got Spielberg, they got Silvestri, like a big 80s composer. They had some good casting, and it just didn't totally all work. And I say that as a person, I still enjoyed the movie. Like, I like the movie, but it felt like the potential was so much higher for like what this could have been. And they just it could have been more, but I still had fun. Nick, where do you kind of land on like legacy standalone thoughts?
I mean, you can't argue with the box office success, right? And you also can't argue with the success of the book. I think as an adaptation, Ready Player One is going to fall short in the legacy category. But if you look at the individual pieces of art, that they both hold up in the legacy standalone category. So bad adaptation, two good pieces of material, as long as you haven't read the book.
Right. That Venn diagram analogy that I made prior, like the circles don't touch.
Yeah. Brian?
It's a great movie if you disassociate it from the book. Having been such a fan of the book, it's what taints a movie for me. Looking at it from an objective outsider view, it is a decent movie. It is $600 million in the box office. Obviously says that people like the movie. People talk about the movie still. So who am I, some guy, in buttfuck nowhere, Canada, to sit there and say that the movie is garbage? Oh, that's right. I'm Brian. The movie is garbage. But no, it's I think if more people read the book, less people would like the movie. That's the legacy of this. If you like the movie, don't read the book. If you like the book, don't watch the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Or treat it as an alternate universe.
Yeah.
Like a different telling.
Alternate view. I just a thought occurred. It almost kind of makes me feel the same, not as extreme, but like that 93 Super Mario Brothers movie. Great movie. It's such a interesting, weird movie, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Mario Brothers.
Yeah, like literally nothing.
It's kind of, I get similar vibes. I know that's an extreme example, but it's almost like they're two different things that you can appreciate separately and like both, but they're just not, they don't really fit together very well.
Yeah. Nick, who would you say won the movie?
Greg Hinkson, because
your dad.
my dad and I got into an argument over this, like over the weekend when I was just at home. He said, I've only seen the movie straight through 3 times. And I had to call baloney on that because I've seen this movie at least 20 times just sitting on the couch trying to hang out with my parents. So I don't know what he was talking about, but I think Greg Hinkson won.
He did win
because he watched this. He's watched this a lot.
Sam, who won the movie?
I was really struggling with how I was going to answer this because I'm not sure because I don't love the movie. I guess who loved the movie is anyone, or who won the movie is anyone who likes it. So, I mean, yeah, if you like the movie, then that's a good movie for you. You win.
Brian, who won the movie?
Oh, TJ Miller for sure, because he got another job. But I think people who are the target audience of the references, like the Halo references and that kind of era generation, won the movie because they get something with their own nostalgia in it. So those people probably walked into the movie feeling great because, you know, they're seeing their childhood. Like I read the book and I read my childhood.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are we sure Jesse Eisenberg didn't win the movie?
He definitely did.
Because he wasn't
win the
in
podcast. All right, let's run down, give some scores across this, and we can wrap up here. Casting, Nick, what are you giving this?
3.5.
Sam, what are you giving casting? Out of 5.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3.
Brian,
Looking at the 5 people, I'm going to give it 3.5.
yeah, I'd go 3 as well. Mainly Simon Pegg. Sorry, Simon, I love you, but just that really didn't work for me.
Oh, for me, it was
Plot?
TJ Miller.
Plot execution, faithfulness to the source material. Brian, I'll start with you with this one.
A very healthy 1.5.
Sam,
I was right there with you, 1.5.
Nick,
That's actually better than I thought both of you were going to give it, to be honest.
Hey, the idea's there.
I gave it a
Yeah.
2.5.
I'm actually going to give this a 3 entirely for The Shining. World building. What would you give this one? Sam, we'll start with you.
2.5.
2.5. Brian,
I'll give it a 3. It built the world as it had to for the movie.
Nick,
I actually gave world building a 4 here. I thought that was one of the best things it did, was give a visual representation, like a pretty cool visual representation to things that I wanted to see.
yeah, I give it a 3.5. I think a lot of that leaning on the representation of the journal, like we said, things like that. They made some good choices like that. Soundtrack, where we at, Nick?
3.5. Classic
Yeah,
80s tunes. Nothing crazy, but the needle drops were good.
Middle of the road, yeah. Sam,
I give it a 3. For a book, or that loved Rush, I could have used Rush. Was there any Rush? There was no
I think
Rush.
there was one.
There was a poster.
There was just one Rush
You had to
poster
sing
at
your
the
own.
end.
I don't think there was any. Yeah,
No, I could have used some Rush.
yeah, me too.
It's very
Brian?
Canadian of you.
Salute you, Sam. You're close enough to the border, you get contact Canadian.
That's true. It's true. We do.
I give it a 3. Good music. Sam said it could use more Rush. Every movie could use more Rush. In fact, I want to see Bambi with nothing but the Rush soundtrack.
Legacy standalone appeal. Nick, bring us home. Where are we at?
3.5.
3.5. Brian,
You just can't argue with the numbers.
I was going to go a little bit lower, but he makes a really good point. The numbers do give this a 3.5.
Sam,
I'm going to give it a 3. I mean, I watched it once and then I watched it this one other time, and I probably won't watch it again, but I don't know. Even if it's a movie that's just kind of on, I don't know if I'd stick around for it. But that's just me. I don't speak for everyone, obviously, but I'm going to go 3.
yeah, I'd give it a 3 too. I think, like we said, numbers don't lie. And as a standalone, I think this movie works really good as a standalone and is way more enjoyable outside of any knowledge of the book. I think you're maybe a little bit confused. I was fielding a lot of questions from my fiance during this movie as to what was going on with some plot elements.
Why are you making me watch this? Why are we getting married if we're going to watch this our entire life? Stop.
Yeah. Can't we watch something good with Jesse Eisenberg?
Let's watch The Shining.
No one's ever said that, ever.
Let's watch something good with Jesse Eisenberg.
Well, I cannot add all those numbers up right now. That's just way too much. So we'll figure out what this ending score is later. But any final thoughts you want to get out here, Brian?
I thought you wanted to wrap up. No, no, I guess I've changed a little bit. I came into this with I love the book, so the movie's going to be garbage. But through the discussion, I guess disassociate the book from the movie, and you'll enjoy both. Or if you like the book, don't watch the movie, and vice versa. That's my final thought. For what it is, the movie is good enough. The book is way better. It's something I'm definitely going to be reading probably for my 20th or 25th time in the next 5 years. But overall, yeah, this was fun. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
this was
absolutely.
great.
Looking at the video now, I think Nick's
Love
getting
to come
bored
on
of me,
again
so I'm going
sometime.
to pass it on.
I'm just sitting here.
No, this was good. I enjoyed it. Sam, any final thoughts you have on Ready Player One?
No, nothing that I haven't already said before. But yeah, this was great. This was a blast. I really enjoyed it. So anytime you boys either want to come join us in Retrotopia or have us back, I'm all for it. This was great.
Absolutely. Nick, final words from you?
I just want to thank Brian and Sam for coming on. I agree. It's been fun. Appreciate you guys taking the time.
It was lots of fun.
If we're throwing shade at if we're throwing shade at Nick, then I guess like in real life, Nick would be cast as Jesse Eisenberg. That's my dream
In the
casting for you.
Nick cast as Jesse Eisenberg in the remaking of The Shining.
That is my literal nightmare.
As Jack Torrance.
Oh, thanks for listening, everybody. We had a great time with the Retrotopia boys. Next episode, celebrating our 1 year anniversary by remastering Jurassic Park. If you have any thoughts, reach out to us. You know where to find us. Thanks, guys, for coming on. We had a really good time. Take it easy, everybody.